Hey guys, just before the video starts, a quick reminder that due to the changes to the YouTube partnership program, your subscriptions are going to be even more important than before. So if you appreciate or like the content, please subscribe to the channel. The faster we hit the 1,000 subscribers, the faster I'll be able to deliver continuous content to you guys. So now, let's move on to the video. Hey everybody, today we're going to be looking at the best used graphics cards you can pick up for under 200 bucks in 2018. Just before we go on to the list, however, this is a follow-up to my previous video, which were the best graphics cards under $100. So today we're really going to be focusing on between $100 and $200. So if ever you came watching this video because you really wanted a graphics card even under $100, I invite you to look at the video up in the corner. I linked it, which is really the list focusing on the 3 best cards under 100 bucks. However, before checking that video out, do know as well that by going under 100, all the cards will pretty much perform weaker than the ones on the list today. However, the list today is between $100 and $200. So if that's what you're looking for, keep tuned in, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, why are we doing this video? Well, it's no surprise to anyone, graphics cards right now are really overpriced. If you're looking at a new graphics card, you're going to be paying up to between 50 to even 90% more than the MSRP, depending on where you live and which card you're actually going for. So, the only way around this for the moment is to go pick up a used graphics card. And at the same time, the used graphics card market has been impacted as well. Because today the list, what we're going to look at is not the eBay prices. It's the prices that I would suggest you try and pick these cards up for. And honestly, all these cards, I've already managed in the last few months to pick them up at around the prices I'm going to be mentioning. So it is possible, but it is going to be taking a little wheeling and dealing with the people selling them. And I don't recommend going through eBay or like any of the large worldwide online services, just because the market right now the cards are in such high demand that on the global markets, they're pretty much overpriced because some regions are just paying crazy prices for the cards nowadays. So unless you're ready to check eBay like every 10 minutes to really find that one auction that's going to finish at a lower price, what I recommend is that you look at the personal ads. So depending in Canada, it would be stuff like Kijiji or Craigslist in the US. Depending on where you live, you guys normally know the services you can look at, but I recommend person-to-person selling, just because honestly, because the person's saving the hassle of having to ship the cards, they're generally expecting to take a cut on the price they're selling it at, just for the ease of exchange. So, without further ado, now that we know what we're looking at, let's start with number 5. So, the first entry on our list, and the cheapest of the cards we're going to be looking at, or out of the cards that I recommend, is the GTX 960. The GTX 960, you should be aiming for paying, I would say, between $100 and $110 US. And honestly, that is really the maximum I would pay. If anyone's trying to sell it more than that, in all honesty, you're just better off picking up a 1050. The reason why is because you're getting similar performance. And if you're going to go for a used card where you generally don't have a warranty and it's almost guaranteed that the lifespan it'll be shortened somewhat, you have to be getting, at least in my opinion, a 30 to 40% discount off of the regular price of a matching card in today's market. And the matching card for the GTX 960 is really the 2GB 1050 nowadays. And you'll be getting similar frame rates in most games, and however, if you manage to pick it up for between $100 and $110, you'll be saving between 30 and 40% of the price the 1050 would have cost you, making it, in my opinion, a very good pickup. However, once again, the GTX 960 is what I would consider an entry-level gaming card, meaning that on most popular titles, you're going to have to go for lower settings. So don't expect to pick this card up and play PUBG at high settings and hitting above 60 FPS on all occasions. You're going to have to look at low to medium settings on those demanding or non-optimized titles. However, if you're playing somewhat older games, meaning about 2 to 3 years back, you can generally get away with pretty high settings, so medium to high settings, and you'll be keeping above the 60 FPS in most games. So a good pickup in 2018, if the price is right, is the GTX 960. Now, however, once we're going to get into further down the list, you're going to see that all the other cards are pretty much going to outperform this card easily. So without further ado, let's move on to number 4. Now, the card in fourth position on the list, which is the GTX 770, has a special place in my heart. The reason why is because this card really is one of the kings of the price for performance. It's not the most powerful card on the list, and that's the reason it doesn't make it any higher. But really, if you're looking at what I call a gateway card, a card that'll let you survive in today's gaming market till the normal GPU prices come down. By normal, I mean new GPU prices come down. I love the GTX 770. The reason why is it'll play pretty much every modern title. As long as some titles you're ready to put the settings down to medium, you'll pretty much be able to play anything out on the market today. And you can generally steal this card away for around $120 US. If you're looking at the 4GB models, because it's offered in 2 and 4 gigabytes, then I say yes, you can go up to 130. But above 130, it's really not worth it, because the rest of the cards on the list, you'll see for the price, the price performance just doesn't become worth it anymore. And this is really one of the reasons this card is even on the list, and one of the reason it's one of my favorite on the list is because at $120, you won't feel bad chucking the card in 6 months to a year, or maybe selling it back, at a $30 to $40 markdown when you actually decide to replace it with a new GPU because the prices have stabilized, or because you've decided to bite the bullet and you've saved up the money to pay the big price for today's new GPUs. So the GTX 770 is an awesome performer for the price if you can get it between $120 and $130 US. Now, the last 3 cards on the list you're going to see, we have I would say a serious skip in power, meaning that the last 3 cards on the list are really there because for under $200, you're getting a significant notch above a 1050, or at least you're looking at a 1050 Ti territory in performance. And the last 2 you'll see will even be above. So without further ado, let's start and take a look at number 3. Now, number 3 on the list is actually the only AMD card that managed to make the list. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of AMD. I have nothing against them. The only reason that there is only one card that made the list is because of the mining situation, most AMD cards, even the lower end ones, are overpriced. So in the price for performance, they're really lacking currently because you have better options coming from NVIDIA in the used market. But the card in number 3 manages to stay on the list because if you can find it at the recommended prices, which is between $140 and $150, the HD 7970 is an excellent buy. Now, this card will give you 1050 Ti or above performance in pretty much every game, meaning that you're going to be able to run everything. And at most games, I would say above 70% of games, you'll be able to put the settings at high or ultra, especially if you're looking at older games. Now, some of the games that are really demanding or less well optimized, you'll have to lower the settings maybe to high, and maybe medium if you're using a high refresh rate monitor and you want to really hit easily above the 60 frames to have a better, gaming experience. But on average, if you can get the 7970 for between $140 and $150 US, which honestly, you should not have to pay more for this card than that, just because above that, you're better off actually going, in my opinion, for a 1050 Ti, putting the extra $30-40 on it, and picking up a new card that's going to come with a warranty and all that. And this is always a problem that we're going to be looking at today on the list, is that for these cards to make sense and be worth it, you have to really be getting them at the prices I'm mentioning. So you really have to hit the grind, hit the deals, and wait till you can pick up one of these cards at one of these prices. And don't be scared to say no to someone. If someone's selling one and he doesn't want to lower his price, there's always going to be someone else that eventually is going to come along with a decent offer and a decent card. So once again, the HD 7970 is an excellent buy in 2018 as long as you manage to pick it up for around $140 to $150 US. And now we're really getting into the territory where these cards can be an everyday gaming card, can play pretty much any game, and I wouldn't be scared that for the next year or two you'll be able to survive on this card. And who knows, by then I really hope the GPU prices come back to normal, but we never know what the future is going to hold. Now we're moving on to the top 2 cards on the list, and honestly, you're going to see between number 1 and number 2, it took me actually a whole week to decide which would be number 1 and number 2 because the performance on the 2 cards is excellent at under $200. But I won't ruin the surprise for now. Let's go look at number 2. So now at number 2, as I just said a few seconds ago, deciding between number 1 and number 2 was really not easy. And when it came down to it, it was the 2 cards that we're going to look, and I won't ruin number 1, it'll be a surprise, but in number 2, we have the GTX 780. Now the GTX 780 nowadays, honestly, I find it's a beast of a card. It'll run any game at high or ultra settings, I would say easily, especially if you manage to pick up the 6GB model. Now this is a card that nowadays has stood the test of time very well. And honestly, you'll be easily hitting 60 FPS even on demanding or, non-optimized titles. When I say non-optimized, I'm really always aiming, unfortunately, at PUBG. I love the game, but unfortunately, the optimization on it asks for GPUs that are way too powerful for a multiplayer game with that popularity. But I digress. Let's get back to the list. Like I said, the GTX 780. This card is a beast, and you can generally pick it up for around $180 US. If we are looking at the 6GB model, I would say go up to our ceiling of $200 if the person has a really nice one, it's clean, it's in good condition. But honestly, you should be able to pull away with most GTX 780s around $180 and $200. And honestly, it is a very good buy. You're probably getting performance on par almost with a GTX 1060 nowadays. And I would say even a GTX 6GB, like not the 3GB down cut version. I'm saying that on average the 780, when I've tested it out versus the 1060, the performance in game is very similar, and honestly, some titles it'll do better than the 1060, some other titles the 1060 will take the first spot, but it is an excellent card nowadays, and if you pick it up for $180 to $200 and a GTX 1060 is running you $350, that means you're at somewhat like a 70% saving on the price. It is way worth it. I would say honestly, if you find one on the market and you don't know what to do with it, just pick it up and pass it on to a friend of yours. I love this card, and honestly the performance is surprising nowadays because this card is now like 4 or 5 years old, but it has stood the test of time very admirably. I guess you guys are wondering why I didn't put in number 1 with how I'm speaking about it, but honestly the card that's in number 1 is really my all-time favorite pickup if you want a powerhouse at the $200 mark. So without further ado, let's move on to the last and best card on the list at number 1. Now, the last card coming in at number 1 on our list, I'm not going to hold it out any longer, is the GTX 970. Now this card, as I said earlier, was really battling with the 780 for first position. And performance-wise, they are actually very close in performance. The only reason ultimately that I decided to put the 970 above the 780 is for 2 simple reasons. Number 1 is power consumption. The 970 is much more power efficient than the 780. So when we're looking at 2 cards with equivalent performance and then you have to decide which one you would prefer above the other, well, I have to go beyond just the pure gaming, and I had to go to power consumption. 970 is going to fit in a lot more systems with a lot, giving you a lot more leeway on the power supplies. And the second reason as well is simply because since it's a 9 series card, you can expect the driver to support to be a little better and to maybe last a little longer with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA doesn't have the best. They pop out a lot of driver updates, but they don't have the best record, I would say, with updating older cards on a regular basis. Meaning that taking a 9 series card, you have a much higher chance of having quick driver updates and efficient driver updates, but more than a 7 series card. So ultimately, the number one position is going to be taken by the GTX 970. Now this card honestly has been harder and harder to get at the $200 price mark, but that's really where you have to focus on getting this card. And like I said earlier, for every card on this list, don't be afraid of the hustle. You have to, when you're dealing and you want to get a card at the price you want to pay, or that you should be paying, you don't have to be scared of actually losing a card, because another one will be coming along. Some people out there don't know what they have. They think that because they paid the card, like $500 4 years ago, well, they should be selling it at almost $500 nowadays. If you're into gaming, you know that's not the way it works, but you can't expect everyone out there to understand that. So if you can't get the card at a decent price, just move on and another deal will come along. But if you can pick up this card at $200, you are going to be very pleased, because once again, you're getting a card that will be able to play any title at 1080p, high to ultra settings, and you won't have any problems hitting the above 60 frame mark. And then all those easy, esports titles or whatnot, you'll be able to saturate your high frame rate monitors if you're running at 144 Hertz or higher, because this card is a beast for those type of games. Like if you're playing League of Legends at 240 FPS, which I wouldn't say is necessary, but if you are, you'll be able to saturate it with this card. You want to play PUBG and you want to play above 100 FPS, the GTX 970 is what you should be looking for, especially if you want to reserve a budget of $200 or less. Less meaning I don't really think you'll be able to pick up nowadays a GTX 970 under 200, but it is an awesome card. And forget about that whole memory issue it had where it had 3.5 gigabytes rather than 4. You're not going to notice the missing 0.5 gigabytes when you're playing games. It's not really going to cause much of an issue, and the card hasn't had any problems keeping up with today's titles so far at the 3.5 gigabyte mark. That doesn't mean that 3 or 4 years down the road it's not going to start having trouble with that VRAM buffer, but nowadays the card has stood the test of time very well. And when you can't, if you don't want to dish out the crazy sky high prices on a new GPU, go for a GTX 970, take your $200 and have some good time gaming, because honestly it is an awesome card. Like the 780 on my list, these are two powerhouse cards, so you're really going to have a good time. Now I hope you guys appreciated this list. We're going to stop here because above 200, honestly, there's only 2-3 cards. Everyone knows them, and the prices get as crazy almost as new GPUs. Like if you're going for a 980 Ti, you're going to be paying like $300-400 nowadays. I'm not saying that it's not a good buy, but it's not the kind of buy I would go for. I would just be the kind to buy a gateway card as one of the cards on these lists, any one of the cards on these lists, and hold off till the 1080 Ti's come down in price or whatnot, and then really go for an awesome card like that. But that's always up to you guys. I hope this list was useful for some of you out there, and as usual, likes and subscribes are always appreciated and will really help the channel grow, and I hope I'll see you guys all in my next video.